Aliens always saw humans as weak, emotional, and primitive. They called them simple-minded creatures, beings who acted on feelings, not logic. To the Varan Empire, one of the oldest and most intelligent species in the galaxy, humans were nothing but an odd curiosity. They fought too much, cared too deeply, and survived against impossible odds. But one day that opinion began to change. Inside the cold halls of the Varan Research Station, a human prisoner was brought in. His name was Captain Elias Ward, an officer captured during a border conflict near the Outer Rim. He walked calmly between two guards, even with chains on his wrists. His face showed no fear, no anger, only quiet strength. The alien scientists whispered among themselves. They found his calmness strange. Most prisoners screamed or begged, but this human looked like he was waiting for something. At the center of the lab stood Zorath, a tall, silver-skinned telepath with glowing eyes. He was one of the most powerful minds among his people, a master of mental connection. Zorath had read the thoughts of hundreds of species across the stars. None had ever resisted him. The Varan Council wanted answers. They wanted to know what made humans so hard to predict in battle, so they gave Zorath a simple order: enter the human's mind. Zorath stepped closer to Elias. "You understand what will happen?" he said coldly. Elias only smiled. "Do what you must." That small smile unsettled Zorath. He pushed the feeling away and activated the mind-link device. The air in the room hummed softly. Blue light formed around their heads as Zorath reached out with his mind. At first it was easy, just like every other connection. He saw flashes of memory, faces, cities, and stars. Then something changed. Zorath's brow furrowed. There was noise, too much emotion, too much thought. Humans were supposed to be simple, but Elias's mind was different. Zorath tried to focus, but images kept flooding in. Soldiers standing in the rain, refusing to give up. Children laughing in broken cities. Fire and blood, then hope and rebuilding. He felt love, grief, and rage all at once. It was too much. It was alive. Zorath gasped and tried to pull back, but the link wouldn't break. Something inside Elias's mind had noticed him. He saw a battlefield and endless fire and smoke. Human soldiers fought until their last breath. Then in the smoke he saw something else. A dark figure watching him. It wasn't Elias, it wasn't human. It was something deeper. A shadow made of memory, emotion, and willpower. The shadow looked back at him. Zorath froze. He had read thousands of minds before, but this was the first time he felt. "Seemed impossible," he whispered inside his mind. The shadow moved closer. Zorath heard words that made his chest tighten. A voice spoke, calm, cold, human. "You wanted to understand us." "Now you see," Zorath screamed. The connection broke. He fell backward, his body shaking. Sparks flew from the mind-link device. The other scientists rushed to him. "Zorath, what happened?" One shouted. He couldn't speak at first. His hands trembled. His eyes glowed faintly blue, still trapped in shock. Elias sat quietly in the chair, untouched. His pulse was calm. His eyes looked at Zorath, not with anger, but pity. Zorath finally found his voice weak and broken. "There's something in the human mind," he whispered. "Something watching me back." Then he collapsed. The room fell silent. Machines beeped softly. Smoke drifted from the broken mind-link device. The scientist stared at Elias. He tilted his head and said quietly, "You shouldn't have looked." Guards stepped forward, aiming their weapons, but Elias didn't move. He simply closed his eyes. Outside the lab window, distant stars shined cold and silent, as if they had just witnessed something no one should have seen. That night, the station's security log showed something strange. For a moment, all sensors detected a second consciousness, vast, powerful, and untraceable, passing through the station's network. The logs named it Unknown Entity, Source, Human Mind, and from that moment on, no alien ever called humans simple again. The research station remained silent for hours after the experiment. The walls still smelled of burnt metal, and the mind-link chamber was filled with broken wires and cracked glass. Zorath lay inside a medical pod, breathing slowly. His skin, once silver and smooth, now showed strange dark lines, marks that glowed faintly like blue veins of light. He had not woken up since he collapsed, The alien scientists watched in fear and confusion. Nothing in their records explained what had happened. One of the lead researchers, Commander Rethan, spoke quietly. What did the human do to him? No one answered. They all turned to the observation room, where Captain Elias sat calmly in his cell. His hands rested on the table. His eyes were calm, too calm. Every few minutes, Elias would look toward the glass and smile faintly, as if he knew they were afraid. The scientists reviewed the recording of the telepathic session again and again. Most of it was normal until a burst of static filled the system, but deep inside that static, there was something else. A voice. Faint, low, but clear enough to send chills through everyone who heard it. It said only 2 words, "Stay out." The room fell silent after that playback. No one spoke for a long time. Rethan turned to his assistant. "Run it again," he ordered. The assistant hesitated. "Sir, the data is unstable. It might damage the system." "Run it," Rethan said sharply. The audio repeated. Static crackled through the speakers. The same voice spoke again, not Elias's, not Zorath's. Deeper, older, heavier. "Stay out." The lights flickered across the room. The computers glitched for a moment, screens flashing white. Then everything went dark for 3 seconds before power returned. One scientist whispered, "That wasn't a message. It was a warning." Hours later, Zorath's medical pod beeped. He woke up suddenly, gasping for air. Doctors rushed to his side. "Zorath, you're awake!" He didn't answer. His eyes were open but distant, staring at something only he could see. "Zorath, can you hear us?" He blinked slowly. His voice was weak. "Where is he?" "Who?" the doctor asked. "The human." When they told him Elias was still alive, still calm, Zorath began to tremble. "You have to stop this. Don't look into him again. Don't even think near him," the doctor frowned. "What did you see?" Zorath's eyes glowed faintly as he whispered. "I didn't just see his mind. I saw what lives inside it." He pressed his hand against the glass of the medical pod. His fingers shook violently. "There's something in the human mind that doesn't belong there. It looked at me like I was prey." In the observation cell, Elias sat in silence. His heart rate was normal, his breathing steady. But strange things began happening around him. Security cameras flickered every few minutes. The guards complained of headaches. One even fainted, saying he heard whispers in his head. When Rethan came to question Elias, he found him sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed. "Captain Elias," Rethan said, "you're going to tell me what you did to our telepath." Elias opened his eyes slowly. "I didn't do anything," he said softly. "You looked into something that doesn't like to be seen." Rethan frowned. "You're hiding something. Some kind of weapon?" Elias smiled gently. "Not a weapon. A memory. What does that mean?" Elias looked toward the ceiling. "Every human carries something inside. It's what keeps us alive when everything else falls apart." Rethan leaned forward. "What did Zorath see?" Elias's eyes darkened slightly. He saw the truth. He saw what it means to be human. Rethan slammed his hand on the table. "Enough riddles! Tell me now." Elias looked at him calmly. "Tell me, Commander. When you sleep, do you dream?" Rethan froze. "Of course I do," Elias nodded. "Then you should know. Dreams can't always be controlled. Sometimes they dream back." That night, Zorath began to scream in his sleep. Doctors ran to his room, but he was already awake, sweating, eyes wide in terror. He clutched his head and shouted, "It's in my mind. It's inside me." When they tried to calm him, every light in the room turned red. The screens on the wall displayed strange human symbols, unknown letters and shapes glowing in fiery orange. No one could explain how they got there. The system wasn't even connected to the mind link anymore. Zorath began speaking words in English, a human language he had never learned. His voice was cold, hollow, and not entirely his own. "You shouldn't have entered," he said in a tone that didn't sound like him at all. "Now you carry it too." Then silence. Zorath fainted again and all the machines powered down. By the next day, half the telepaths on the station reported nightmares. They all dreamed of the same thing. A dark figure standing on a battlefield surrounded by fire. Its eyes were human, but behind them burned something endless. Zorath woke up again, whispering human words. One scientist leaned closer and heard him say, "It's not a man. It's a storm. It's the memory of every human that ever lived." The scientists began to argue among themselves. Some wanted to destroy Elias immediately. Others believed he might be a key to something greater. But Rathan had already decided. "Prepare the deep scan," he said. "We're going to open his mind again, so this time with full force." When Zorath heard that order, he shouted, "No! If you open it again, it won't just watch. It will reach back." But no one listened. Outside the lab window, Captain Elias smiled faintly to himself. He whispered under his breath, "They never learn." And as the lights dimmed, every telepath aboard the station felt it, a presence stirring deep inside their thoughts, like a distant thunder rolling closer. The next morning, the alien research station floated quietly above a red planet. From the outside, everything looked calm, but inside, fear spread through every hall. The telepaths refused to sleep. Each time they closed their eyes, they saw the same thing: fire, ruins, and a shadow watching from the smoke. They said it felt human. They said it remembered them. Commander Rethan didn't care about their fear. He wanted results. The council demanded answers. What is the secret behind the human mind? He shouted in the control room. No one could answer. Only Zorath stayed silent. His skin still glowed faintly blue, his eyes tired but alert. He sat in his medical chair, staring at the floor. He whispered to himself, "They don't understand. They think they can control it." A guard entered. "Sir, the human is ready for another scan." Zorath's head snapped up. "No, stop this now. You'll kill us all." Rethan turned sharply. "You lost your courage, telepath? You're afraid of one human?" Zorath looked him straight in the eye. "You should be." In the observation chamber, Captain Elias was seated again, calm as always. He wore no chains this time. The guards had learned that they didn't matter. The first time they tried to restrain him again, the chains had simply melted without fire. Rethan entered with a cold expression. "You will tell us what you are," he said. Elias looked at him with quiet amusement. "What I am? I'm human. Isn't that what you wanted to study? You're lying. There's something inside you. A weapon, a creature. What is it?" Elias smiled faintly. "It's nothing you can hold in your hands." The new device, larger and stronger than before, was prepared. This time, 10 telepaths were connected together to increase their strength. Their combined minds would dive deep into the human's consciousness and extract the truth. Zorath watched from the glass chamber. His hands trembled. He whispered to himself, "Please don't do it." The scientists ignored him. The machines started. Blue light filled the room. At first, everything looked stable. The telepaths concentrated, their energy connecting with Elias's mind. Then, one by one, their faces changed. The first telepath gasped, eyes wide with horror. The second started crying silently. The third fell back in his chair, screaming, "Shut it down!" Zorath yelled. "Shut it down now." But it was too late, the lights flickered. The machines glowed red. Through the monitors, the scientists saw what the telepaths were seeing. A vast storm of memories. Thousands of human lives flashed before their eyes. Wars, laughter, pain, love, victory, and death. They saw soldiers holding the line while the world burned around them. They saw mothers protecting their children in the middle of fire. They saw men and women standing tall when they had nothing left to fight with but courage. The telepaths couldn't handle it. Their minds were breaking. One shouted, "There's too much!" Too many voices. Another screamed, "They never stop fighting." And then something spoke through Elias. The air grew heavy. The temperature dropped. Elias's voice changed, deeper, echoing through every corner of the station. "You came searching for weakness," it said. "But you found what kept us alive." The telepaths collapsed, their neural links burning out. Sparks flew from the machine. Elias slowly stood up. His eyes glowed with soft golden light. He looked around at the broken equipment, then at Rethan behind the glass. "Now you've seen it," Elias said quietly. "The thing you feared." Rethan's voice shook. What is it?" Elias took a slow breath. "It's not a weapon. It's what we call the human spirit. You tried to look inside it, and now it looks back," Rethan whispered. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Elias asked. "You call us primitive. Yet your minds broke trying to understand us." Zorath stepped into the room then, weak but awake. His eyes met Elias's. He spoke softly. "You showed me your memories. I saw them all. The pain, the hope. It's endless," Elias nodded. "That's humanity. We remember everything, every loss, every dream, every battle. It all lives inside us, Zorath hesitated. That shadow, the one in your mind. What is it? Elias looked down for a moment. It's not a shadow. It's all of us. Every human who ever lived. Every emotion ever felt. When you look deep enough into a human mind, you don't see one person. You see the whole species. The scientists behind the glass whispered in fear. One of them said, "This is madness. One mind cannot hold billions of memories." But the screens around them began to flicker again. Lines of human text appeared. Messages in dozens of languages from Earth's history. Zorath read them slowly, his voice trembling. They remember everything? Elias turned to him. Yes, that's why we survive what others can't. We carry our dead with us in memory and spirit. That's what scared you, Zorath stepped closer, almost whispering. Then what do you want from us? Elias smiled faintly. Nothing. I just wanted you to understand. He sat down again, calm and silent. The lights around him dimmed. The machines powered off one by one. Later that night, Rethan stood alone in the observation room. He stared at Elias, still sitting peacefully in his cell. He whispered to himself, "What kind of species are they?" Behind him, Zorath said softly, "The kind that should never be underestimated." Outside the station window, the red planet turned slowly below, and somewhere deep inside the ship's system, a faint human heartbeat echoed, though no one could tell if it came from Elias or from the memory that now lived inside the machines. The alien research station orbited silently above the red planet. But deep inside its walls, something had changed. The telepathic network, a system that connected all Varan minds for communication, began to behave strangely. Data glitched, psychic signals overlapped, and whispers echoed through the mental channels where only silence should exist. The engineers believed it was damage from the last experiment. But Zorath knew better. He stood in the command center, eyes dark and tired. "It's not the machines," he said quietly. "It's him. It's the human." Commander Rethan turned sharply. "Nonsense. He's locked in his cell." Zorath pointed toward the flickering screens. "Then explain why the system now speaks in human languages." The room fell silent. On every monitor, words began to appear. English, Russian, Mandarin, languages no Varan could understand. But one line repeated again and again, glowing faintly in white text. "We remember." The scientists stared, afraid to breathe. In his cell, Captain Elias sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed. His breathing was slow, calm, but the air around him shimmered faintly, like heat waves. He whispered to himself, "You shouldn't have connected us all." Inside the telepathic network, chaos spread. One by one, alien telepaths began to see flashes, images that were not their own. They saw Earth. They saw oceans, mountains, cities full of life. They saw humans standing together in wars, crying in loss and rising again after every fall. A young telepath screamed in fear. "There are billions of them. I can feel their thoughts." Another shouted, "It's too much. I can hear their memories." Zorath gripped his head. Human voices echoed inside his mind. Whispers, laughter, battle cries. He fell to his knees. Rethan yelled, "Cut the network! Disconnect everyone." But when they tried, nothing happened. The system refused to respond. On the main screen, a human face appeared. Not Elias's, but something larger, made of countless overlapping features. Men, women, children, all blending into one. It spoke with 1,000 voices, united as one. "You wanted to know who we are. Now you do." The entire station shook. Lights flickered. The telepathic core, a crystal structure that amplified their minds, began to glow with a golden hue, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Zorath forced himself up, shouting over the noise. "Rethan, shut it down before it reaches the core." Rethan's hands flew across the controls, but nothing responded. "I can't. It's overriding everything." Through the psychic link, the alien minds were pulled into a storm of memories. Each one felt as if they were living 1,000 lives at once. They saw ancient humans building fire in the dark. They felt the terror of war and the hope of peace. They heard songs, prayers, and screams all woven together. The youngest telepath fell to the floor, shaking. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's endless." Zorath tried to protect his mind, building barriers around his thoughts. But the human presence slipped through every wall. It wasn't violent. It wasn't cruel. It was curious. He heard Elias's voice echo gently in his head. Now you see it, Zorath. The thing that keeps us standing when the universe breaks us. Zorath gasped, clutching his chest. Why are you showing me this? Because your people called us simple. You thought emotion made us weak. But emotion is what built our strength. Zorath fell silent. He felt tears run down his cheeks. The first tears he had ever shed in his life. Outside the chamber, alarms blared. The telepathic core reached critical power. If it exploded, the entire station would be destroyed. Rathan shouted to the crew, "Evacuate! Everyone, get to the shuttles!" But Zorath didn't move. He looked through the glass wall at Elias, who was still sitting calmly in his cell, surrounded by golden light. Zorath entered the cell manually, ignoring the commander's warnings. He stood before Elias and said, "Stop this." "You'll kill everyone?" Elias opened his eyes. They glowed softly like the stars outside. "I'm not doing this, you are. You linked us. And now you're hearing what's been inside humanity since the beginning." Zorath's voice broke. "It's too much. Your memories, your pain. It's crushing us." Elias nodded sadly. "Yes, that's what it feels like to be human. To carry everything, even—" The telepathic storm had passed, but the silence that followed was worse. For the first time in history, the Varan network was quiet. No voices, no shared thoughts, no constant hum of minds connected across the station. Only cold emptiness. Zorath sat in the medical bay, surrounded by still figures. Alien telepaths lying on beds, motionless. Their minds had not recovered. Some murmured in broken words. Others only stared at the ceiling, eyes glassy and distant. Commander Rathan walked among them, his face tight with anger. "They're useless," he said coldly. "The human destroyed them." Zorath looked up sharply. "No." He showed them something too vast to understand. "Their minds need time to heal." Rathan slammed his hand on a table. "Heal? They're whispering in human words, Zorath. They keep saying, 'We remember.' That's not healing, and that's corruption." Zorath turned away. He couldn't explain it, but part of him understood what the broken telepaths felt. When the human had connected to their network, Zorath had seen what true memory looked like. It wasn't just knowledge. It was emotion, alive and raw, and now he couldn't unsee it. Down in the containment wing, Captain Elias was still under guard. He looked weaker now, his skin pale, but his eyes still held the same quiet strength. A new scientist, Dr. Liran, approached his cell with a recorder. "You will explain what you did," she said. "How did you invade our network?" Elias gave a small smile. "I didn't invade. You opened the door." Liran frowned. "Our minds were not built to see what you showed us." Elias tilted his head slightly. "Maybe that's the problem. You've built your strength on control, and we built ours on chaos." The scientist stepped back uneasy. "You turned our telepaths into broken shells." Elias's expression softened. "Or maybe I freed them." Liran turned off the recorder and walked away, her hands shaking. Behind her, Elias closed his eyes again. In his mind, he could still feel the network's faint echo, the whispers of Varan telepaths calling to him across the void. Meanwhile, Zorath couldn't rest. He kept hearing fragments of human memories in his mind, flashes of laughter, pain, the sound of rain hitting glass. He didn't know if they were real or part of what the human had left behind. Late one night, he walked into the observation room. The stars shone outside, endless and silent, and then a voice spoke behind him. "You can't stop thinking about them, can you?" Zorath turned, and it was Elias standing in the doorway, unguarded. Zorath froze. "How are you?" Elias smiled faintly. "You left the cell open." Zorath checked his wrist panel, and the locks really were disengaged. He hadn't done that. Elias walked closer, calm, as if he belonged there. "Your people tried to understand us through power, but what you saw, what they saw, wasn't power. It was connection." Zorath stepped back. "You broke our minds. You filled us with pain and noise." Elias nodded slowly. "Yes, because that's what it feels like to be human. Every joy, every loss, every memory, and we carry them all at once. We don't erase them. We live with them." Zorath shook his head. "It's too heavy." "No mind can hold that much." Elias looked up at the stars. "Every human mind does." Suddenly, alarms blared through the station. Rathan's voice echoed over the comms. "Zorath!" Containment breach. The telepaths are waking and something's wrong with them. Zorath ran with Elias toward the medical wing. When they arrived, the sight froze everyone in place. The broken telepaths were standing. But their eyes glowed gold, not the usual pale blue of the Varen. Their bodies pulsed faintly with light like embers burning inside glass. One of them turned slowly toward Zorath. Her voice was soft, but when she spoke, it was not her own. It was layered, dozens of voices speaking through her. Zorath. We remember. Elias stood beside him, silent. The telepath continued, her head tilting in a human-like gesture. We have seen your memories. And theirs. The line between us is gone. Rethan arrived with soldiers aiming their weapons. Stand down. You're infected. The glowing telepath turned her head toward him, eyes calm. Infection is only another word for change. Then, as if in answer, every console on the walls lit up. Human text began to scroll across the alien screens. Link established. Memory channel open. Zorath's heart pounded. Elias, what's happening? Elias stared at the telepaths. They're not broken anymore. They're becoming something new. The golden light spread through the walls like veins of fire. One by one, the telepaths raised their hands, glowing energy connecting them in a circle. The station's power surged. Stop them, Rethan shouted. But when the soldiers fired, the energy pulses dissolved the shots before they hit. Zorath shouted over the noise. They're merging the human network with ours. Elias's expression was unreadable. No, they're bridging the gap, two minds becoming one. Rethan grabbed Zorath by the arm. Shut it down before they erase us all. But Zorath didn't move. For the first time, he felt what the telepaths felt. Connection, unity, warmth. He heard faint whispers in his head. Not alien this time, but human. Voices saying, don't be afraid. You're not alone. Tears filled his eyes. This is beautiful, Rethan shouted. It's corruption. But Zorath turned to him and said quietly, No, Commander. It's evolution. The golden light expanded until it filled the room. Rethan screamed as systems overloaded. The telepaths stood perfectly still, their eyes burning bright, a bridge of thought between species. And then, silence. The light vanished. When the smoke cleared, the telepaths were gone. The room was empty except for Zorath and Elias. Zorath looked around in shock. Where did they go? Elias smiled faintly. They didn't go anywhere. They just stepped forward and into a place your kind hasn't learned to see yet. Zorath whispered. They're alive? Elias nodded. Yes. And they're waiting. He turned toward the window where distant stars shimmered faintly with gold. They're calling us now, right, both human and Varen. Something new has begun. Zorath stared out at the stars. He didn't know what humanity really was anymore. Not just a species, not just a world, but a force that could awaken minds and reshape reality. He finally understood what the human meant when he said, We don't invade. We remember. And now the Varen would remember too. Silence covered the Varen station. The alarms had stopped. The lights no longer flickered. The vast halls that once echoed with voices now stood still and empty, as if time itself was holding its breath. Zorath stood near the viewing window, staring into the endless dark of space. For the first time in his life, he couldn't feel the network of his people. No telepathic presence, no shared thoughts, no comforting hum of minds linked together, only quiet. Behind him, Captain Elias stood with his hands behind his back, calm as ever. The faint golden glow in his eyes had faded, but there was still something strange about him, something deeper than before. Zorath turned toward him. They're gone, he said softly. The others. The telepaths, the ones who merged. Did they die? Elias looked out at the stars, then shook his head slowly. No, they didn't die, Zorath. They stepped into a new layer of existence, something between thought and energy. They crossed the line your kind never dared to see. Zorath frowned. Crossed into what? Elias looked back at him. The human collective. Zorath's skin rippled with unease. A collective? Like a hive mind? Elias smiled faintly. Not a hive, a chorus. Every mind singing its own truth, but together. Not control, not silence, balance. Zorath turned away, his mind spinning. You say that as if it's beautiful. But they're gone, Elias. Their bodies are gone. Their minds. Unreachable, Elias walked closer. Reachable, but differently. You just don't know how to listen yet. As they spoke, the stars outside began to flicker. Not like light, more like heartbeat pulses spreading through the black. Zorath stepped closer to the window. What is that? Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. Them, the ones who merged. They're talking. Zorath's mind twitched. He felt something faint, like a whisper underwater, soft and distant. Words forming in the dark. Zorath, we are here. He froze. It was the same voice he'd heard before. The joined voices of the telepaths. But now it wasn't frightening. It was calm, gentle, human. Do not fear. The bridge is open. The stars pulsed again, forming lines of light across the void. Zorath gasped. They're forming a pattern. A network between systems. Elias nodded slowly. A living map. The beginning of something new and a mind that connects worlds. Zorath turned to him. And you? Are you part of it too? Elias didn't answer at first. His gaze softened. I was human once. Now I'm... Something between. Zorath took a step back. So this was your plan? To infect us? To turn my people into part of your creation? Elias shook his head. No, Zorath. We never planned this. You reached into our mind first. We simply answered. Zorath's voice trembled. But you changed us. Elias looked down, his tone quiet but steady. Change is what life does. You called us simple. But maybe simplicity was the strength you never saw. The ability to feel everything and still move forward. An alert suddenly blinked on Zorath's console. Long-range sensors had detected signals, not from Varan ships, but from human colonies across light years. Every colony, every ship, every beacon was glowing with the same golden frequency. Zorath's eyes widened. It's spreading, Elias nodded. They're joining, human and Varan alike. Every telepath who ever touched the human mind now hears the call. Zorath stared at the data streaming across the screen. You're merging our entire species. Elias looked back at the stars. Not merging, connecting. Moments later, the air,